Cool. Yeah, so we're broadcasting na. You're now seeing, so Simon and Jose, you can check out the number of participants on the panel underneath. You'll be able to see a
Yeah.
real-time update on how many they are.
Yeah.
Ayan.
I see
So good,
around 45. Yeah.
Yeah,
right,
I've seen
50.
that.
50, right?
Excellent.
Very, like climbing very quickly there, Uh,
65, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, good afternoon, everyone here in the Philippines, no, and even in other parts of the world, because apparently Jose has invited his classmates and Simon's former students as well from Swinburne University from Melbourne, Australia. So, good afternoon. My name is John Riley Baluyot, and I'm the current president of the Philippine Society for Talent Development. And we're here today with a special guest, Simon Hammond from Australia. And we also have Jose, Jose de Colon.
Hi. Hi,
Hi. Let's
everyone.
like let's say hi first to Jose. Hi Jose, who's gonna be moderating for us today.
Great.
Hi. And hello
Hi.
Simon. Hello Simon. How are you doing?
Hello, John. Hello, everyone in the Philippines. I'm doing very well. It's really nice in this new world to actually be able to talk to so many people so far away in a split second. It's amazing. So we're enjoying that part of this crisis, but not the rest of it.
Right. Amazing. Thank you so
That's
much for
true.
that, Simon and Jose. So at this point, I want to ask everyone if the lines are clear. Like if you can see Simon, Jose, and I very clearly, and if our sounds are all our audio is also clear. All right, lines are
Very much
clear.
clear. Good,
Right,
good.
cool. All right,
Okay.
so let me do a quick poll on people who are here now, right? I'm just gonna get the not. I'm just gonna borrow the hosting from you, okay? Um, okay. Let's do a quick poll on demographics because we want to get to know you. We want to know who you are, where you're calling from. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong question. Right. I gave you the surprise. Okay. So we want to know what type of talent development practitioner are you? Where are you calling from? Is this your first time in the PSTD Learn from Home series? So that Simon and Jose will have better framing of some of the concepts and topics that they will discuss, and also some examples that they can share with you in relation to your profile, right? So right now the polls are now going, and oh, that's interesting. A lot of the majority of the people who are responding to right now are actually educators. So just like
Right.
you, Simon, and just like you, Jose. So I'm seeing 60 responses now against 122 people who are in the room, going 70 and 80. Yeah. So Jose and Simon, how did you guys meet?
Well, we met because I was teaching a Masters of Marketing, Brand and Innovation at Swinburne University, and Jose was one of my star students. So he, he
Thank
was the
you.
one who asked the most difficult questions, and as such, did very well in that course. Obviously, in learning on that side of it, and as an educator, he's gone on his own path. So that was 2 years ago, was it,
Two
or a year
years
and a half?
ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a year and a half ago. And, it's time really flies if you think about it. And I'm so
Right.
glad, Simon, that you really, you accepted our invitation. I know how busy you are, how many companies you have, and the number of clients you have. So it truly is an honor for you to be here.
I appreciate that, Jose. It's a very crazy time too, and with this time, so much of the work has changed with CEOs looking for
Yeah.
different sorts of advice now, rather than just pure, branding advice. They're looking for survival advice, or
Right.
business restructure advice, or personal advice sometimes. So these sort of things become quite challenging. So I get in front of this computer about 7:30 in the morning and leave about 7:30 at night, and
Yeah.
just crave the sunshine some days.
Yeah.
Right, correct. So thank you for that, Jose and Simon. Let me show you now the result of the poll. There's 100 people who have responded already, and I'm gonna share the results now. So can you see the demographic in your screen?
Yeah.
Majority of the people who responded are actually educators. The second one are others. So these are probably uncategorized as talent development practitioners. But majority of the categorized ones are educators and soft skills trainers. Then we have HR admin next, and then managers and executives. And then Majority of the people are also calling from the main island of the Philippines, which is Luzon. That means that we have good work to do for us to reach out more people in Visayas and Mindanao. And 76% of the people who are in the call have actually attended PSED Learn from Home series previously. So this is not their first time. Only 34% have are new.
Well, John, in branding terms, you're doing very well for retention of your audience at 76%. There's a lot of brands around the world that would love those numbers.
Wow, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for making this happen. That's great news to hear from Simon. Yeah. So
Yeah.
let me start with some slides then, because I want also to let some of those new people know why we are doing this, and even some updates also from the people who have dialed in consistently with our current sessions. So again, we are the Philippine Society for Talent Development, and our objective for the PSTD Learn from Home series is to support the Philippine learning community as we cope during this crisis. We want to help. We want to help basically because we all know that everyone's having a difficult time, and the learnings that you're getting from all of this, regardless if they're skills building or simply just inspiring, is still help, right? And a lot of our people have written testimonials about how much contribution some of these learning sessions have had in their lives, and we are very happy. And I think that's also the reason why 76% of you have attended the session and are still continuing to do so given today. The second one is, of course, we want to be able to make sure that we have a community where PSTD can get some sort of funding, mainly because PSTD is a nonprofit organization, and we have continued to operate without laying off our warm bodies and staff. So, and because we really think that helping now is really the way to go. And we need all of our staff in order for us to get that in. We have done 30 classes, over 9,000 live Zoom attendees from all over the country. And we have also gotten a good following in Facebook, especially on the videos. And I'm not sure if you guys know about this, but the videos, majority of them are actually in our Facebook page. So if in case you miss some of these videos, all you have to do is to go to the Facebook page of PSTD, and you will be able to see the videos here. So like, for example, right now, you see these are the most recent videos that we've had. And this is our almost 25 videos well curated for you based on the weeks that we have been running these training programs. All right. So we hope you can benefit from it because they're free. You can just access and follow our page. That's facebook.com/mypstd, because we can update you on the registrations for the sessions. Right. So please make sure that you maximize this benefit. We also do our trainings and webinars in themes. So this is the theme for next month. So we already have the theme for June. And on July, we will be focusing on teachers, right? So this program for teachers, we will be doing a TNA sprint on June 5 from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. So the TNA is a training needs analysis sprint focusing on social-emotional needs of teachers, because we want to understand what programs or webinars we will be running on July, because July's month will be focused on our teachers. We know that a lot of you will be opening classes, or probably still on the limbo of opening classes on August, depending on our health situation. But at the same time, we want to be able to help our educators to prepare, because the uncertainties of this crisis has brought out a very stressful situation for our educators. And as much as possible, we want really to help. But before we provide you with some of those well thought out curated sessions, we want to hear from you first. And that's the TNA session. Now, the problem that we have is that we didn't know that we are going to get so many registrants, because right now, in just 2 hours, we now have 2,000 registered teachers in the session, and we only have a slot of 500. So we are going to update you how we're going to segmentize the session so that we will have more concentration on, for example, primary and secondary muna, and then probably tertiary and postgrad on another session on the same day. We're going to update you. We haven't decided yet, but we will update because we think that this is very important for you as well. So yeah, just want to get it out there so that it's clear that we are very happy with the reception, and we are gonna do something to make sure we can accommodate as many people as we can. Um, so this one is a chill conversation at the end of the week. Just register. We have very interesting profiles for you here. And of course, we also have our paid sessions for us to generate funds. So in order for us to doing all of these beautiful things, please attend our paid sessions too, especially if you have the resources to do so. A lot of these are scheduled and are in our Facebook page. The other way by which we can recoup our funds is through membership. So if you also have the funds and if you want to benefit from the paid webinars and even the monthly itipanans, or we call it the monthly learning sessions that we usually charge for members, then please become a member of PSTD, even on an individual capacity. You can go to our website or scan this QR code based on how to become a member. Right. Okay. So, Jose, I'm gonna turn over to you now so that you can talk about the reminders and also introduce Simon.
Thanks a lot, John. So just as some norms for today, all attendees will be in mute to manage the flow of information. For questions, be sure to put it in the Q&A tab on the lower portion of Zoom. This will help us to actually track your questions and for us to track if it's been answered or not. Sometimes, because if you put it in the chat, it might get lost along with the other comments and input. So if you just want to co-participate and share your reactions, you can put it on the chat box. All right. So John, I think you're showing the Facebook screen.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. It's all right. It's all right because
I
we're
need
almost at the
to.
end. So
I
so
needed to do live because
no, that's all right. So we, as what John showed, we also have this streaming on Facebook. So we're recording this for everyone else who are not able to register in Zoom. So
right.
For those who are in Zoom and you stay here for 40 minutes, then you'll get a certificate of training afterwards. So I take, it's a great honor for me to actually introduce our speaker, Simon Hammond. For over 30 years, Simon Hammond has consistently defined the real drivers of social change and consumer behavior. At his heart, Simon is a cultural anthropologist, stemming from his earliest training as an investigative journalist to the last 30 years of making sense of modern consumerism, branding, and consumer connection. His outspoken views on human connection, the power of belonging, and his research and development of the concept of belief within business has made Hammond a sought-after speaker and business advisor in North America, Europe, and Southeast Asia. As a writer and creative director, he has started national magazines, run talkback radio programs, authored 4 books on his provocative theories on modern society, created the world's first theatrical rock show for business, which I have attended, that has played in over 20 countries and founded 6 of the most talked about Australian branding agencies over the past 3 decades. His B branding philosophy has reshaped the way the business world sees branding, while becoming a studied benchmark in brand positioning in Swinburne University and Australia. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Simon.
Wow, thank you, Jose. That's a really nice intro, and I'd forgotten that you actually were at Lectern Rock, which is indeed
yes, I did. Yeah.
a crazy rock show for business. And I think that the other thing I wanted to point out is that I just wanted to thank both Jose and John for setting this sort of thing up, and especially reaching out to me in Australia. It's a really unique opportunity to talk about very important things such as belief and what we stand for and our own personal brands at a time where we're going to be incredibly tested in this area. We're going to be tested as to who we are, what our substance is, what do we stand for, and whether or not we can kind of make sense of the crazy world that we're now going to inherit. So I really want to spend some time in kind of two halves during this webinar. The first, I'm going to talk to you about how I've come about the notion on personal sort of positioning and branding because of the work I've done in corporate branding. So I am going to give you a little bit of a view on some of the things Jose just talked about. Some of the last 32 years now I've been running my brand agencies, and some of the learnings from that, even as educators or coaches or mentors, I think you'll find it very interesting because it puts into place what's going on in the world today when it comes to the way that businesses are operating and how people are meant to be employed in those businesses, and more importantly, how they engage into those businesses. It's a major part of the coaching education part of the world. And then in the second part, I really want to then challenge you to think about what you stand for and how you are going to be in this time of what I would consider unprecedented lies in the world, which I will get to later, I promise. But as I said, for over those 30 years, I've really been trying more than anything else to get businesses to understand and then think deeply about what is called branding. But branding is really one of those words that many people misunderstand. You know, we need to redefine what branding is. And by that, I mean, branding really is a sign of where you belong. You know, when it was invented as a concept, it was done in Mexico, and the early cattle farmers decided they would use a hot poker with a sign on it and put it onto the side of the cows. So when the cows wandered around many hundreds and thousands of acres, you would know where they belonged and you would know where they would come back to, and they could go and find them and bring them back. So that was an early sort of formation of a tribe of cows, a herd of cows, which was a brand. And so a brand has been stolen by marketing people. And a brand doesn't belong to marketing people. A brand belongs to the culture. And so in all the 30 years plus I've been dealing with businesses, I've been trying to get them to understand that a brand is a sign of where you belong and who you are. And so when the guys asked me to talk about the personal branding stuff, it's a no-brainer. I mean, personal branding is branding. We are all brands. And it's about substance, not what you sell. It's about belief that creates a belonging for those around you. And in a business sense, they're called customers. And more important than any of that, it's about cultural relevance. So I'm going to talk a little bit in the moment about cultural relevance, about how you and businesses and brands must be relevant to where we find ourselves in. And then finally, it's about why you matter. And that's really much like people, I guess. So I'm going to, as we go, share some slides with you as well. And I thought I'd start here with a slide that asks you to participate in a question. So let me put it up there. Because really what I want to talk about is by the end of this webinar, I'd like you to go away scratching your head and thinking deeply about what you stand for and who you are. And I'll explain why shortly. But first, I'd like you to ask yourself this question. I'd like to do a poll, and we can bring that poll up in a second. But the question is, do you have a written belief that declares why you matter to the world? Have you written down a belief on why you matter to the world? And I'd like you to answer yes or no. Let's have the poll up. So let's have a look. Do you have a belief in why you matter in this world we find ourselves in? So it's a simple question. And as you consider this, I want you to answer honestly whether you've actually, whether you've thought about it and whether you've written it down. Have you got a written version of what you stand for? And I want to know out of the, I think we've got now, let me just check, we've got 260 odd people on this. I'd love to know of the 266 people, how many of you have got a written belief? So I'm going to give you about another 10 or 20 seconds just to get your thoughts together. And I want you to answer yes or no to this question. I could give you some background music. I could actually sing a little bit to you. I could play my guitar, both of which aren't going to happen, I can assure you, because you'd run from this webinar. But I think that's about enough time. So John or Jose or whoever's doing this, what have we got up so far?
So we're now at 60%, Simon. I'm gonna show the results now.
Thank you.
Can you see it?
So 73% have written a belief in why they matter to the world. That is unbelievably good. That is a great start. So, and you know what? I am genuinely quite surprised at that. So let me talk about why that's important, because I'm going to come back to that point very shortly, and I'm going to test you on that belief. Because if you've got a belief, then this is going to be an even better webinar, because you're going to be able to test your belief against a theory I have. So let me first of all take you back to this notion of what brand is, because this has a pertinence to what you're going to answer when you come back to your belief. So as I've said earlier, brand is not about marketing. It's about belief, but it's powered by relevant truths. And up there, you'll see a really great belief. And this belief is, you are more beautiful than you think. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you a second poll straight away. I'd like you to answer, what brand is this? So I want you to think about, and there's a poll coming up now. We might bring the poll up straight away. So what brand is this? I want you to answer from 3 options. A, is this Victoria's Secret? B, is this Dove? And C, is this Nestle? So this brand is a brand that, in my opinion, is driven and powered by a relevant truth. And I'll talk about that truth in a moment, but it's got a belief that is not advertised. It is driven through content. It's driven through all sorts of activities and activations around the world. And it's very much around the truth of who we are as people. And I want to now find out, John, if you could let us know where we're at with the poll survey. Okay, wow, okay. Well, I may as well go home because you already know the answers. That's very good work. 68% have said Dove. Now, if you were sitting on this webinar from the Dove brand, you would be going, hallelujah, this is fantastic. 68% know this is Dove without a logo. There is no logo there. That's incredibly important, because this brand has tripled its bottom line over the last 12 years by converting its business from being a business that's a trading company of selling product to being a brand that stands for something. And because it stands for something, people relate to it. You see, the idea of a belief is when you have a belief about who you are, and as a business, when you portray that, people have an option of either joining and sharing that belief or rejecting you. There's no sort of vanilla sort of grey area. You state what you stand for, and people have an option to join. In Dove's case, one of the videos they did about 2 years ago, it was a 2-minute video about this idea of real beauty. And that video was shared on YouTube by 100 million people in 4 weeks. So what you're getting is brands that are so resonant by what they stand for that they have become incredibly successful commercially. And so when it comes to the future of education and the future of coaching and the future of personal development, we must learn, and business must learn, that substance and belief, and then the subsequent tribal belonging to that belief, are far more important than anything we've ever had before in the business or societal worlds. Belief is the thing that's missing in the way that we live our lives. And as brands like Dove take it, and 68% of you knew about Dove without a logo, you know them through what they stand for. That is powerful. So how do you do this? Well, at the essence of a great belief is cultural relevance. And cultural relevance can be a very sticky, difficult area, because if you're looking at something like, Search for the Idol there in the Philippines, which happens to be one of the top rating shows on your television, viewed in my calculation by over 7 million viewers. What is that about? I mean, we're not that sophisticated. We love reality TV. We love watching people in a way that puts themselves in front of 7 million people to either crash and burn in a bad voice or to become a hero. You know, the relevance of culture is really important that you understand it from both a business positioning, but also, in a moment when I get to it, from a personal positioning. And so cultural relevance can be all sorts of things. It's found in television. It's found in sport. I mean, what I want you to do here is have a look at the expressions there. Look deeply into that photograph that's on the screen, and you'll see human nature at its absolute real, at its absolute heart. You know, people completely lose all their inhibitions when you aren't watching them in a research way, when they're just living their life. And the spectators to football and people on television, we are seeing great cultural emotion, yet in many businesses we're closing that emotion down and we're being safe and politically correct and overly respectful to so many things, when in fact what we need to do is connect with people's emotions. We are scared, and fear is driving a lot of business, and that fear is cascading down into who we're meant to be in post-COVID-19, which is what I'll talk about in a moment. So look to culture. Don't look to the warnings and the politicians. Look to how people are acting and look to how people are reacting. And you'll see that fear so often is driving what we do. And we're being fed a lot of fear at the moment because we've got to overreact to protect ourselves. But in my country, and I'm sure it's the same for many, in my country, we've had probably the best rate of closing down this virus of any country in the world, right up there, but at a cost that is unknown. The cost to our society could be massive in a social way. And no one really knows what's going to happen there yet, but we do know that everyone I speak to at the moment, I pass them on the street, they're scared. And they're scared of each other. They're scared of society. You're distrustful. We've got to be very clear as we come out of this on our own personal standings, what we're about, just as brands have to do. So a lot of my work at the moment is trying to advise brands on how they steer through the pandemic world, when in fact, the most radical and drastic reaction isn't always the only reaction. The bottom line is that people want to be inspired. So fear can only go so far. And when we come to your own personal brands shortly, you can't live with fear. You have to live with hope, and you have to be inspired, not scared and not merely informed. So it's not enough to know. You've got to have wisdom. And so to just be informed of all the dangers, we won't live long like that. It'll crush our souls, it'll stop our purpose, and we'll become more mentally weak than we are at the moment. I mean, you look at Star Wars as a franchise. It's done over $9 billion in ticket sales alone. Forget merchandising, forget everything else that goes with it. It's in Star Wars 8, they exceeded $1.3 billion in a franchise that was seen to be old and tired. Far from it. Star Wars is one of the great cultural cues that you should understand. It's about belief, it's about belonging, and it's about behavior. And so the central tenet of Star Wars is the idea that good beats evil, and this thing called the Force is in the universe and is there to win over against the darker side. And the dark side, of course, is basically your own belief systems and what you stand for. Star Wars is a metaphor for life. Star Wars is life. And we've got to remember popular culture is there to kind of guide us into the truth and reality of we want to be inspired. But we want to be inspired in a world that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I want to draw your attention, if you can see it, to a photograph there with Donald Trump and a woman and the woman's child. I mean, to me, that says a lot about where we're at as a society. There's the madman who is running the world. There's the mother who is completely crazy with adoration, and the kid who may well need therapy for the next 30 years. This is a world that makes no sense whatsoever. So again, what I'm building to here is I'm trying to get you to sort of understand as we go through this, that it's really important that you don't position yourself in a world of lies, which I will explain shortly, based on political correction or based on fear or based on not understanding what's really going on. We respond as people, and now I want to talk just briefly about the branding world and how it's done this. We respond as people to those who make sense of all this stuff I'm talking about. So the real change in branding over the last 20 years is that brands have gone from being trading companies into being what I would call substance brands, or go one step further, social movements. And so the great brands are now forming our belief systems, and they're forming tribes that we can belong to, and they're helping us to know how to behave. This is incredibly important to understand and incredibly interesting, because if you think about the brands that you interact with, the real brands that you spend the most money on and not worried about how expensive or not they are, like Apple or Nike, they're the brands that say something about you. They're the brands that allow us to form our own views because of their views. So have a look at that slide up there at the moment. This is Nike. And it says when it turned 30 years old, it did this campaign. And this campaign said, excuse me, believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. And it featured this guy here called, his name was Kaepernick, Colin Kaepernick. And he was an NFL player who refused to stand for the national anthem in America in protest against the treatment of black rights and Afro-Americans. And as such, he was lambasted and sent out of the NFL. They brought him back. Nike brought him back. And they said, we're not necessarily supporting one thing over another. We're saying stand for something, believe in something. And so what we're doing as consumers is we're looking for these cues. And what we're doing is we're looking for ways that we can form our own views from the associations we have with brands. And this is what I mean by social movement brands. And it has a major bearing on how we're going to come out of COVID-19 and the pandemic, because people are going to look for more than trading companies. They're going to look for the new emergence of new social movement brands where we align ourselves to businesses that make sense of the world for us. So some of them you might recognize up there, such as Patagonia or Virgin or Tesla or Lush or Nike or Apple. These are the sorts, or Google, these are the sorts of brands that have helped us define what we believe in and what we want to stand for and how we want to act. And this isn't a stretch. You know, we've lost a lot of the old pillars of society. And as such now, we have new pillars, and these new pillars are actually brands. So let me give you a quick view on why these brands work so well. I call them B brands. And B brands is one of the books I wrote, and it's simple. I've already mentioned it. B brands is a brand that has a belief that's relevant to the culture it's in. That belief is so strong that people want to belong to it. And that belonging leads to behavior that is incredible. Belief, belonging, behavior is B brands. And let me give you the three quick understandings of these belief, belonging, behavior B brands. First of all, in a business, and by the way, for you as well as a person, you need to create a belief around the cultural truth of why you matter. That's incredibly hard to do because you need to understand the culture you're in. You can't just have a belief that doesn't make you relevant to the culture you're in. So you need to understand the truth. And in something like this one here, I'll read this to you. It's a lovely piece. It's called The Search. What is it that makes us explore? The restless urge to pack and go. When the rumor of the perfect wave won't leave your mind. The anticipation, the laughs, the disasters, it defines who we are. Who do you think that is? I'm going to go to a poll on this. You've got three choices. Let's bring the poll up. Who believes in the search? Which brand is this? Is it Harley Davidson? Is it Rip Curl? Or is it Expedia? So Harley Davidson is one brand. So you can vote on the Harley of the Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson, Rip Curl, or Expedia? I want you to tell me who you think the search has been created by. Which of those three brands is the search all about? I'm going to give you another 10 or 20 seconds just to think about that, because this is a brand that has a clear belief in why it exists. Okay, so let's hear about the problems. Yes, John.
Yeah, just a heads up. So I think we made a mistake on the poll. We were able to separate Harley and Davidson. So you just have to add the two then.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay,
So
I'm gonna show it to you now.
Okay. Yeah, so that's interesting because I put Expedia into it. Let's just leave that up for a second, because 40% of you got that right. It's Rip Curl, and 37% said Expedia. I put Expedia up as somewhat of a trick because Expedia, it could be about the search. But here's the difference. Thank you, John. We can let that go. Here's the difference in that. I want you to look at that search. Now, the idea of Rip Curl in the search has made Rip Curl one of the great brands in the world, because it's very different having a belief than it is having a claim. And the famous idea of the search, in other words, what makes us explore, and the restless urge to pack and go, and the rumor of the perfect wave, this is what leaves Rip Curl away from everybody else. It's about a deep understanding to the cultural relevance of the surfing community. Not to everybody, but just the surfers. So they deeply understand who they exist for. And in doing so, they know that every surfer wants to find the perfect wave. And that's the beauty about this belief. Beliefs have got to be relevant to the world you find yourself in. The next thing you need to do is you need to build people around the belief. In a business sense, I teach that you must build a tribe. And that tribe has to have a sense of belonging. So when it comes to brands such as this, I'm not going to ask you who that is because you'll all know because you can see his t-shirt. But what a tribe that is. The Apple brand is a tribal brand. And it's a brand with a belief that people belong to, and they do stupid behavior such as spending $2,000 on a piece of equipment they don't need. This is a true B brand. And as such, Apple then goes on to remind the world, as others do, why they matter. As we come towards the end of this in a couple of moments' time, I'm going to ask you why you matter again through this idea of what you can be. But in the case of this, I want to test you here. And I think this is the last poll I want to do before we get into the next piece. This is a very famous piece of communication, and it's called Here's to the Crazy Ones. And it goes on to say the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. And I want you to tell me, as we look at this, who wrote Here's to the Crazy Ones? Was it Google? Was it Samsung? Or was it Apple? So I'm going to give you a moment to think about that. You should know. It is the most valuable and most successful brand the world's ever seen. And I don't think any brand will come close to it. So let's have a look, John. That's a pretty quick poll. I reckon most people would know this one. What do you think? What was the answers? Wow, that is amazing. Okay. So you're divided between Google and Apple. Well, let me tell you, it's Apple. Every step of the way, it's Apple. It's to the greatest brand that's ever lived. Now, Google, so Apple is the brand in many ways that has defined what I will call B branding, absolute B branding. Because Apple have gone from the very start to now with a central belief to what it does. And they've had a powerful point of view. In Elon Musk's case, he is a great brand. He points to a point of view about the world, and he would have taken off into the universe this morning if it wasn't for the Florida weather. But he'll be launching for the first time a co-partnership with NASA on Saturday, where he takes the first men back into space since the NASA completion of the program finished. So let me move to you. What's all this got to do with you? Be branding you beyond COVID-19. What I've essentially talked about is four things. in brands, you've got to understand what's going on in the world. You've got to understand the truth of that. In other words, what's really going on, and then be relevant for that truth. And that allows you to form a belief. In the world of personal branding, you've got to use your truth to win in this world. And you've got to actually understand what's going on. Let me just give you a quick view on what's going on. Number one, and they'll call these the brutal truths. I'm finished writing a book that's coming out in October, and the book is called Brutal Truths. And the book talks about a number of key things, but the point it makes is that really to be something for the real world, you've got to understand the difference between lies and truths. And this is everything. You know, in the 5 minutes or so we've got left as I speak to you, I want you to get this. To really be successful in the post-pandemic world, you've got to work out what is true and what is lies. You've got to work out what is going on with people versus what they say is going on. We are living in a world where meism is killing tribal behavior. Meism is an unprecedented time where we're self-obsessed by how people see us. Social media is at the heart of it. And all of a sudden we're portraying images that aren't true of us. And we're setting up social media that means everyone's trying to compete with each other, and the social media isn't true in the first place. We're creating a world full of perceptions that aren't true. Life is not fair or equal, yet we're wanting it to be. We're trying to say it should be. We're trying to say it is. So we've got this thing where we're scratching our heads and saying, in my world, it's not equal. I can't get the same job as them. I don't have the life that they have. What's wrong with me? And so if we're sort of digesting the lies that we are now able to make in society so ably, then what we do is we get confused and we close down our own instinct. And then we become not resilient, because then we say, well, we're not as good, or we're feeling mentally down. And most of that comes from not being able to understand what's really going on in the world. Not being able to understand that the truth is most people are confused. The truth is most people are competing. Most people are instinctive. Most people are reacting out of their gut. And so there's a disconnect between the way the world is looking and the way the world for us actually is. You've got to be something to the real world, not to the sort of perceived world that's being created under a bunch of lies. This is a serious problem, especially when it comes to teaching. In my world, where I'm teaching 21, 22, 23, 25-year-olds, they are literally confused. And they're confused about what they're meant to be in a world that they don't make any sense of, because nothing makes sense anymore. Their hearts and their instinct is not connecting with all these messages we're now getting in a very complex world. So what I've devised is an idea that is all about how do you be your most. And I want you to look at these three things. I want you to think of a moment where you have lived in the best way possible for yourself. I want you to think about the moment where you've been at your most. And what I call that is a moment of self-truth. And it's made up of three things. When was it that you used the talent that you were born with? And you matched that with the skills you've learned. And with that, you had an effect on people. So I'll run that past you again. There's a moment I want you to picture in your mind's eye, and it was a real moment for you, where you had the talent you were born with, and you're able to use it. You're able to combine it with skills that you've learned. And through that, you're able to be and have an effect on people. That could be family, it could be a business, it could be children, it could be a wider community. I want you to work out your moment of self-truth, because if you get this moment of self-truth, this is when you can be your most. And in being your most and taking those three things, this is the moment you are the best version of yourself. And this should form your belief in why you matter. Don't just pluck a belief out of the air and go, well, I think I think the world should, I think we should be environmentally conscious. That is not a self-belief. That is a point of view. What I want to challenge you to do is go further than picking a point of view, and this time go with a moment of self-truth. In other words, what's your stance? What's your belief? And what do you stand for? Your belief in why you matter to the world is much more powerful than a point of view that says, oh, I think we should all save the earth. Of course we should. But why do you matter? In other words, why and how can you help with that? Because if you don't know who you are in this post-pandemic world, you will get washed up in all of the stuff that's going to happen. So the last part about this, as I come to my conclusion, the last part is if you find your moment of self-truth. In other words, if you can picture the moment that you were the best version of yourself, where your talent and skills and your effect on others all came together in an effortless way, and you thought, this is me, this is what I love, this is what I'm best at. Then you take it and you work out how that corresponds to your life. And this is what I call relevance. The life you are living, I want you to ask how that matches up and is relevant to your moment of self-truth. Now, there is a question that should perplex you, because the majority of young people I teach have not got that right yet. They haven't worked out their moment of self-truth, and they may well be chasing the wrong life. And those who are older, and I've done this a lot recently, when they work out their moment of self-truth, they're not quite in the right life. They've got the wrong job. They might have chosen it because they had more money, but it's not fulfillment. And the combination of their talent, skills, and effect isn't being used every day in the life they've chosen. How powerful is that? If you can get those two things right, if you can match your moment of self-truth with your life, and then you can be the true person that you can be. I call the difference between those two things your belief gap. The gap between what you really are and the life you're living. And if you want to know how to survive in the post-pandemic world, the 2021 world, get on board with understanding your moment of self-truth, because there's going to be more lies. There's going to be more rhetoric. There's going to be more stuff swirling around you. If you don't know what you stand for, you're going to fall for anything. And that's the bottom line to all this. You've got to know thyself through understanding your truth and being relevant to the world you're in. And then you've got to be thyself. So it's a big challenge I'm putting you today. I didn't think I should waste your time. I thought we should spend 40 minutes together that might have some impact. So from the world of branding of 32 years, I can tell you this, that the thing that works the most in the business world will also work the most for you. Have an understanding of yourself, and then project that understanding into the world you want to be in and the life you want to live. And it's exactly the same for a business and exactly the same for a brand. So I want to stop there because I know the guys wanted me to have some time with you to answer questions. But I just wanted to finish by saying you can find me on LinkedIn, and there are my two websites. So this is a beginning of a dialogue, I guess, that I'd love you to have with yourself. It works because I know it works, and I've rebranded literally hundreds of businesses around the world using the same methodology of what are you trying to be, not what are you trying to sell. You know, don't go to a party or a venue or a dinner and try and sell yourself. Be yourself based on understanding the best version of yourself, the moment of self-truth, and try and live the life that that moment of self-truth pushes you towards. Then you will be someone who I would want to come across at a dinner party. So with that in mind, I think I might stop sharing that and open it back up to you, Jose or John, whoever wants to come on, and maybe we can start doing any question and answers. There you go.
All right, perfect, perfect, Simon. That has been really illuminating and thought-provoking, as usual. Really, a very different take on branding, and I would say, and I see some of the comments, they were saying that this is amazing and very informative, and that it's very practical, but also very deep.
I also
So
saw, Jose, just
really
there,
great ideas. Yeah.
someone wanted to mention the books. There are 3 books at the moment, guys. And the first one's called Guts, which is not available because it was self-published. The second one is called B Brands. And B Brands is available through Wiley Publishing and through Amazon. And the third one is called CEO of Earth. And CEO of Earth is a book I wrote about what we're talking about here today, which is, belief, belonging, and behavior. But I took it and branded the entire Earth and made Earth into a B brand. And in doing so, of course, solved every problem on Earth. The fourth book, which will come out in October through Holland Publishing, is called Brutal Truths. So I'll give those details to the guys later on. But yeah, someone just kindly said my book will be a bestseller, which is a really nice thought. B Brands has been a bestseller, the others haven't. So, but B Brands certainly has. It's been republished 3 times. CEO of Earth was published in Spanish as well, just in case you speak Spanish. Not that any of us do. But anyway, so there's the answer to that.
Yeah. Yeah. You presented like really good frameworks. We have a question here from Rafael Lopez. He asks, how do you determine that one thing is culturally relevant? You know, there are things that come up, but it's just a short trend, and riding on that would be useless. So in a way, it's also related to what you said about lies and being able to differentiate lies and truth.
Yeah.
How do you know, how can you become relevant? Yeah.
Well, Jose, I should probably get you to answer this because you've done my courses, but I won't put you on the spot. However, it's very simple. You know, the idea of relevance is not transient. You know, when we do our work, what we look at is the deeper motive drivers of human beings towards a subject. So if we're doing a session for a beer company, the subject is not beer, and we're not looking at the transient trends. What we're looking at is people's deep feelings towards the cultural subject that beer fits in. In this case, it would be socializing. And when you look at the deep cultural truth about socializing, you realize that we all seek the same thing. We seek connection, friendship, all these things, and we're very scared of rejection, not finding our tribe. And so you take those insights and you realize that a beer company needs to be something for that. And in the case of the beer company we said it needs to be raised in friendship. And that was the beer company's branding. So yeah, it's not transient. It's very much around the deep insights of people towards the sort of business you're in.
Yeah, yeah. And I liked what you said about really having a deep understanding of who you exist for. So that really means a very, you know very well who your customers are and who you're serving. Is that right?
Exactly. And you got to start with knowing, you got to know who your customers are, but most importantly, what brands get wrong and what we get wrong as people is we think of it only as demographics or psychographics or geographics, and we put people into boxes of targeting.
That's right.
What we really should do is we really should understand the sorts of moments in society where that business fits. So if it's in the moment of socializing, or if it's in the moment of health, or if it's in the moment of travel, what are people's emotional fears and desires and frustrations about that? And then a business can be relevant for that. And obviously then you can start targeting. But you don't target until you know what you stand for based on the culture you're in. And so that's the $1 million trick, that getting it right. I just want to say while I finish off that answer is, I'm reading some of those comments along the way. Guys, thank you for being so kind. I love some of the comments, and I really loved doing this for you. So you've been so kind in some of those comments. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. I want to ask you a little bit more about yourself because you're talking about the moment of self-truth, right?
Yeah.
It would be interesting to know what is your moment of self-truth and talents and skills and effects?
Wow, yeah, that is a good question, isn't it? I knew someone was going to ask me that eventually. My moment of self-truth was I was 15 years old, and I've done this in retrospect. And my brother had just died in a terrible motorcycle accident. He was 17 years old, and it's a tragic, horrible story. But I do remember that everyone fell apart, and my family fell apart, and my parents fell apart. And for some reason, I was thrust into organising everything, and organising the funeral, and having to get up and do the eulogy. And as I got up to do the eulogy, I had my moment of self-truth. I called upon some innate ability to be able to get my thoughts together and speak to a lot of people. I had done a lot of stuff in public speaking and called upon those skills. And by doing that, which felt very natural to me, I had an enormous effect on 1,000 people who had turned up, and the 300 that couldn't get in the church to be at the funeral of this 17-year-old. And I'll never forget the moment that just flowed through me. And I thought, oh my goodness, even in that tragedy, I felt this is really what I'm meant to be. This is who I am. Now, not everyone has a moment like that, but to be honest with you, Jose, that was mine.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for sharing that. I know sorry if it was a little bit personal, but
no, it's a good question. You should ask that.
No, because what you said is really powerful, and also quite challenging too for us. But I think it's important for us to think what those moment of self-truths are, because that's our brand. I mean, that's who we are, right?
Spot on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Right back at you, Jose. What would you have? Any idea what your moment of self-truth might be? I mean, this takes some time, but
it does. It does. So actually, mine is a very similar situation too.
Right.
My mom had died, and it caught us all by surprise. And I was asked by my uncles to also speak during her before she got buried. And again, it was I had to call on some inner reserves. I was a mess.
Yeah.
And I sort of words came out of my mouth. I didn't know, and I thought it was such a messy way of expressing what I felt. But when I asked my cousins afterwards and the rest of my family, and they said, they were really touched by what I said. So I think that was a moment of truth, being able to use my skills, but also it was something that was very touching and very moving. And I could also see the power of words. Yeah.
And that's interesting, Jose, because you're doing, you're probably, if you take the process and you work out the relevance of that moment to what you're doing in life, you're a pretty good match. Like, you're teaching people through your own abilities to kind of articulate and make things powerful for other people. And so you and I have got similar stories, which is awesome. But let's also remember that many people watching this webinar will have far different values, or far different skills, such as never wanting to get on stage, never wanting to speak to people. A lot of people on this call will, of course, be educators, and most will. But this is as applicable to someone who is a tradesman, who is banging in nails with a hammer every day, and understands themselves to a point that makes them the most they can be. And their skills they've learned together with their talent of being able. My nephew is a carpenter. His God-given talent is incredible, and he just makes so complex things so simple, and his effect on the world is amazing. He is doing the right thing for himself.
That's really good. That's amazing. We have a question here from Faith. If you're just starting to communicate your brand, let's say yourself, your personal brand, how do you get people to actually listen to you?
Yeah, well, I think that my instant reaction to that is, if you don't try and get people to listen to you, but develop such a core of who you are that when you do talk, they want to listen. That's that's very powerful, and it's powerful for a person, and it's also powerful for a business. So I would put to you that some businesses like Body Shop, even Apple, some businesses do very little advertising compared to the size of their brand. And the reason they do that is because they are just being. They are being everything they say they are. And I think as a person, if you develop this sort of real groundedness and centeredness and understand yourself, people will just come to you. People will be attracted to you because you've got this core. Whereas if you go into a social place and go, hey, everyone, look at me, I've got something to say, and I'm really, people are going to go, no, you stay away. You're a freak.
Yeah.
So I think develop your centeredness, develop your moment of self-truth, live it, and then have quality conversations with people, and everything else will flow.
All right. That's really good. That's very practical advice. We have a question here from an anonymous attendee. The person's asking, any advice for people who deal with insecurity and anxiety? I think it's something stopping me from finding my truth.
That is probably the best question that anyone can ever ask. And I think it is a genuinely difficult, two of my children have got that, and it's a genuinely difficult world to navigate. What I've tried to do in those sort of situations with people, and with them included, is if you look at a time in your life where you didn't feel anxious and you didn't feel depressed, or you didn't feel really on edge or beaten by the world, and you go back to that, it might be when you were 5, it might be when you were 10, it might be before you got bullied at school, or before you had a problem with your parents. Go back to that time and think about the sort of person you were, and try and deconstruct what your thoughts were, and how you were happy, and what was making you happy. And try and put that, and I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, so please take this as an anthropological view on what's going on in the world, not as a piece of advice. But it is a matter of finding your inner kind of collection of strengths, because without those strengths, even if you are going to get help with someone else, it's hard to take that help if you haven't got a centeredness. So the strengths are, what sort of things come naturally to you? That's the first point. What comes naturally to you? Is it sport? Is it being able to listen? Is it what comes naturally? Secondly, what skills were easy for you to adopt? And you take those two things, and it might be very interesting, because then you can work out what you can do with those two things. I would go back to there every time. What comes natural to you? What skills did you naturally pick up? And then putting that together, how can you start building your confidence around that? That's probably the challenge. But I really, whoever that was, I wish you a lot of luck, because it is always a hard road to hoe, that one. And you will come through it, but try and find it from within as well.
Yeah. Simon, we actually have a lot of questions here. People are, is it possible that you get to answer them offline? We can send them to you. Would it be okay if you answer them even by email, if that's all right?
Send them to me by email. I'll send back.
That's great. Someone was also asking if they could get a copy of your slides.
I'll have a look at them, and I will make a copy in a PDF available via you guys, so you can send it out to request. Yep, I'll do that.
Okay, great. I know we're about to wrap up. Any last words for us, Simon, in terms of us finding our truth in this world of lies?
I think that the final words probably come off that last question, and that, we spend a lot of time on trivial stuff, trying to escape from ourselves. And we have 3 screens open as we're watching something on Netflix and so on. And we're really trying to put off the inevitable, which is self-knowledge and know thyself. And I think that's the crisis of the day. And it's certainly the crisis that millennials are facing into now, is how do you, in a world of distraction and in a world of occupation, how do you actually find yourself? So that's my challenge to everyone, is turn some stuff off and have some time to think, and have some time to build it. So again, thank you to you, Jose, for setting this up. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you, John, for making it happen. And it's been a pleasure talking to so many people from the Philippines in this hour.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, Simon. I think John has a few words to wrap up.
Right. Simon, my God, that was just really, really inspiring. You know, if you ask me the question about self-truths, I don't know if I'll be able to answer you, to be honest. But but what I learned about this session, more importantly, is how important this crisis is as far as getting out the truth in people. Because from what I'm getting from you, the belief and also the truth usually comes out from needs, from vulnerabilities, especially based on the community and the tribe where you belong. And right now, a lot of these people, a lot of the people that you're talking to now, they belong to the learning community. That's the reason why we're here. We have a community of educators. We have a community of trainers, HR practitioners. And I think if you look at that tribe, if you look at that community, and you start to ask me what my moment of self-truth is, it's probably now. Because this movement that we were able to do is it's serving the community that I love. It's serving the community that I was developed in. And it's also being able to use the talents that I've been honed to do and that I grew up with. And a lot of people right now seem to be benefiting from it. So I guess where I'm gonna end this with is the usual hashtag that I tell everyone, which is everyone here are learners, everyone here are also talent developers. And we are all learning as one. Diba? I kid every time that that's just a hashtag, but that's really also a brand that we want people to understand, that we learn as one because we are stronger as a community. And we thank you, Simon, for sending that strong message to us, and Jose for asking those curveballs to Simon. Like I've been waiting for those curveballs to happen, really, and you just
Yeah.
nailed it every time. Thank you so much.
Thanks to
So
our attendees too. They asked some of the difficult questions.
of course,
Good questions too. Yeah.
I know, like I saw like 20 more questions in the Q&A
Yeah.
tab,
Yeah.
and that's a reflection
We
of how
couldn't
much they were
ask.
engaged, right?
Yeah.
I'd like
Yeah.
to get a copy if I can. I don't know if you can do this technically of all the chat, the entire chat
We
roll.
can. We
Yeah. We
can.
could. We
Get that
could.
just so I can have a good look at it. That's
We
awesome.
can. And Simon,
Yeah.
we usually share it to our speakers because this is also our way to give back the feedback, you know.
Thank
These are learnings that people are get. This is not just one way learning for us or for our community, but it's also a way for, of course, our speakers to benefit from the type of engagement and feedback that we're getting from all of
you.
these chats and also these questions. All
Well, John,
right.
I think you're one of the lucky ones to be doing what you're doing, because when I see someone who's got a moment of self-truth and they're living that out, you and Jose, you're lucky. And let's try and get more doing that. It would be a greater world, wouldn't it?
Yes, it will be. Thank you so much for being part of it, Simon. And I hope you
Thank
have a
you.
great day, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week, and we'll see you this Saturday. We will have other additional sessions that we can all learn from. And mabuhay po kayong lahat. Maraming salamat. Simon, take care.
Great.
Jose,
Thank you.
bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
guys.
Simon.
Bye for now.
See you.
See you.
See you, everyone. Bye bye.